Good day, everyone. We're reviewing Wetzel's Limnology textbook, edition number 4, and we are in chapter 5, which is hydrologic systems. And more specifically, we are looking today at lake water balance examples. So constructing a complete water balance for lakes has proven to be a difficult task, especially for larger lakes. As noted, quantifying groundwater seepage both into and out of large lake systems is only possible by estimating this as a residual in the overall water balance, thus subjecting these estimates to large errors. As a result, groundwater fluxes are often ignored in water balances of large lakes. Of the 8 lake systems we summarize, where water balances were estimated, only one of the 6 large lakes, lake area greater than 2,000 square kilometers, considered groundwater inflows, and none estimated any seepage losses. Other than the 2 very small lakes, only Lake Seminole, a reservoir in southwest Georgia, has estimates of both groundwater inputs, 16% of total water inputs, and seepage losses, 2.9% of total water outputs. Groundwater inputs in the 2 small lakes, William Lakes and Mirror Lake, constituted 74% and 16% respectively of total water inputs. The 2 mid-sized lakes with closed outlets, Urmia Lakes and Issyk Kul Lakes, and the small closed lake, William Lakes, have high ratios of precipitation to total water inputs. Although the very large lake, Lake Victoria, with a large lake to catchment area ratio, had the highest precipitation to water input, 0.82. Management implications. Human activities have played a significant role in modifying water resources, the timing and pathways of water transport, and the ultimate delivery of water to rivers, streams, and lakes. These modifications have resulted from extensive land use practices and land cover change, as well as more intensive anthropogenic practices. For example, road and trail construction, residential development, and urbanization. Furthermore, climate change and variability have impacted water sources and water delivery to freshwater bodies in ways that have been difficult to assess and decoupled from anthropogenic activities, effects of land cover change. Forest conversion to other land cover types is one of the most widespread anthropogenic activities affecting catchment hydrology. Much higher rates of evapotranspiration occur from forest stands compared to areas converted to grasslands, brushlands, or agricultural croplands. As such, soil moisture is usually higher in these converted sites than in forested lands, thus generating more annual runoff to receiving streams. However, the pathways that water takes on its way to streams during storms or snowmelt may be affected by individual conversion practices. These hydrological pathways are also influenced by the generally lower amount of organic matter in surface soils of converted sites compared to forests. Surface organic matter serves to promote infiltration and thus subsurface runoff, especially true in temperate regions. When substantial organic matter has been removed, hydrological pathways can change from being subsurface flow dominated to surface runoff dominated, thus accelerating water delivery to streams and enhancing peak flows. Fire is widely used to convert forests to other land uses, particularly in the developing world. Hot fires impart hydrophobicity in surface soil that may last for several years after the initial burn. This water repellency is most pronounced during the first portion of rainstorm, when the surface soils are dry. Once the soils become wetter, the effect of hydrophobicity is reduced. Nevertheless, fire-affected landscape can increase overland flow, peak flows in streams, and surface erosion. Forest harvesting followed by reforestation, for example, sustainable timber harvesting, exerts little influence on catchment hydrology compared with forest conversion practices when surface soils are only moderately disturbed. The organic horizon in most forest soils provides a buffer against surface runoff by enhancing the infiltration capacity of surface soils. Surface runoff from forested areas is mostly associated with roads and trails that are used in the logging, thinning, and site maintenance practices. During extended periods after forest harvesting and extensive thinning, both total annual stream flow and base flow typically increase due to lower evapotranspiration. In areas that develop significant winter snowpacks, forest harvesting increases the snow accumulation on the ground, resulting in more spring runoff and potentially higher peak snowmelt discharges. Tropical forests and dryland forests are more sensitive to site disturbances because of sparse organic matter in surface soils, the former due to high rates of decomposition and the latter due to fewer trees and less biomass. Mechanized agricultural practices can also enhance runoff. Excessive cultivation of surface soils destroys natural soil aggregates and in the long term promotes more overland flow compared to no-till or limited till agriculture. Also, poor irrigation management, for example, over-irrigation or irrigating already wet soils using saline water, causes excess surface runoff that can deliver sediments and agrochemicals to receiving waters. Poor cultivation techniques like plowing up and down hillside also exacerbate overland flow and sediment transport. Plow pans, compacted zone in the subsoil, can cause SOF to develop in sites where water would otherwise naturally percolate deeper in the soil profile. These practices can all increase peak flows in streams during storms and periods of peak snow melts. Heavily grazed pastures also produce increased amount of storm and snowmelt runoff due to compaction caused by ungulate trampling. Such effects are more pronounced in hydrologically active areas of catchments where animals tend to congregate because of more lush forage. Such riparian corridors, swales, and other seasonally moist areas are closely coupled to stream channels, and these changes in runoff from subsurface to overland flow can enhance peak flows in streams and potentially reduce base flows due to restricting infiltration and water storage in soils. Additionally, in heavily grazed sites, extensive cattle trails have shown to transport and concentrate overland flow, causing initiation or expansion of gully systems. So let's look at this figure here, or this table, sorry. Table 5-2, water budgets for selected lakes of different sizes and geographic areas. So on the left, we have lake and the location. Then we have lake and catchment areas and other attributes. Then we have precipitation inputs, surface water input, groundwater inputs, evaporation losses, surface water outputs, groundwater leakage losses, change in storage, and time frame of estimate, and then reference. So the text just looked at, for example, Lake Victoria. I mentioned Lake Victoria. So Lake Victoria has a total catchment area of 193,000 kilometers squared, a lake area of 68,800 kilometers squared, and it's the second largest freshwater lake in the world. Precipitation input, you can see, is very high. Surface water inputs, therefore, is pretty high. They don't have any like groundwater inputs gains, and evaporation losses are very high as well. I mean, Lake Victoria being located in Africa, in the tropical areas of Africa. And then surface water outputs, we have very high as well, so which is higher than the surface water inputs. And then they don't have any groundwater leakage, neither change in storage. So let's look at a lake that is opposite to that, which is Lake Seminole in Georgia, in the US. So this is a small lake, 152 kilometers square. However, the catchment area is pretty large compared to the surface of the lake, 44,548. We have a precipitation input of 0.18, very small. A surface water input that is pretty high, of 10.5. So that is any water reaching the lake besides just water from precipitation. And we have a groundwater input of 2.05. Evaporation losses, it's minimal, 0.27. Surface water outputs, very high, 11.6, which is higher than the surface water inputs. The outputs is higher than the inputs. And then we have groundwater leakage loss, and then change in storage of 0.0089. So that means there is a slight gain in storage of the lake, but very small. Effect of intense anthropogenic activities. Anthropogenic practices that compact soils, seal soils, surface, and concentrate runoff onto limited areas can significantly increase HOF and thus deliver water more rapidly to streams during rainfall and snowmelt events. The compacted or sealed surfaces of roads and trails facilitate the generation of HOF, and this runoff concentrates and discharges at culvert outlets or low-lying discharge nodes along the road, where it can be rapidly connected to streams. Furthermore, when secondary roads are cut into steep hill slopes, they have the potential to intercept subsurface flow, where it is converted to rapid overland runoff on the road surface. If not intercepted, this water continues to travel to streams via slower subsurface flow, even though roads and trails typically make up only a small portion of the catchment, often less than 1% of the area. They contribute a disproportional amount of rapid runoff. Ultimately, it is the degree of connectivity of these roads and trails with stream systems that determines the extent to which they enhance storm runoff. Urban and residential areas contain a complex array of highly connected sealed surfaces, paved areas, buildings, roads, together with drainage infrastructures, all of which facilitate the rapid transport of HOF and contaminants to receiving waters. Because of the extensive nature of sealed surfaces and drains, the connectivity of these rapid runoff paths to stream is high. The resulting storm hydrograph in urbanized catchments are flashier, that is, peak flows are higher and appear earlier compared to a vegetated catchment, whereas duration of storm runoff is shorter. Additionally, when residential construction takes place on hillsides, excavation into the hill slope, as well as placement of fill material, alter natural hydrological pathways, typically redirecting subsurface flow to rapid overland flow pathways. Some urban areas are incorporating green infrastructure such as infiltration gullies and basins, vegetated rooftops, roadside green areas, and permeable asphalt and parking lots into their stormwater management plans to reduce direct runoff and drainage systems that directly link to streams. Benefits of green infrastructure include reducing peak flows, mitigating pollutant runoff, and decreasing stream temperatures. Development and agricultural activities around lakes and near streams that drain into lakes affect the transport of not only water but also sediment, nutrients, and contaminants into lake systems. Sealed surfaces and compacted areas facilitate the rapid transport of materials into lakes, and runoff from agricultural fields and home yards may transport agrochemicals and pesticides. As such, better planning is required to establish vegetated buffers to break the hydrological connectivity from source areas into the lake. A further problem exists when septic systems are used in residences around lakes, causing subsurface transport of contaminants, which may contribute to algal blooms and pathogen contamination. Climate change effects. Climate change and climate variability have important implications for small catchments and river basin hydrology, but the effects are often quite locally dependent, and the long-term trajectory are uncertain. Even the well-recognized temperature increases are not consistent globally and have been periodically affected by volcanic and solar activities. Evidence of long-term trends in precipitation is less convincing, with both annual increase and decrease in annual precipitation found in different regions. Although climate change effects on increases in large storms and flooding have been implicated in many venues, these remain much less predictable compared to temperature changes. This is partly due to the complicating aspect of land use change, local orographic and geomorphic effects, and other dynamic environmental variables. In some temperate regions that receive substantial snowfall, peak flows due to rainfall and base flows have increased over the past few decades, but the larger snowmelt peak flows have decreased. Uncertainties associated with using global circulation models, GCMs, to estimate large precipitation events increase substantially at more local scales and for larger events. Additionally, in regions where runoff is generated by multiple sources, for example, rainfall, snowmelt, glacial melt, the estimation of climate change effects on runoff becomes very complicated. For example, in high elevation regions like Central Asia and the Himalayas, snowpacks may become more variable and eventually decline, but glaciers will release more water in a warming climate until they become disconnected from stream or no longer exist. Predicting these changes together with changing rainfall patterns becomes a daunting task and will depend substantially on local conditions. Thus, large-scale climate change generalization derived from GCMs are not very useful for predicting local hydrological changes. Temperature-driven hydrological changes, for example, droughts, low flows, are more predictable than extreme precipitation events. Climate models project that in many regions not significantly affected by snow accumulation and melt, discharge during periods of low flow will decline. Patterns of droughts are generally expected to increase in the long term, particularly in dry climates where it coupled with poor land management practices, for example, overgrazing, unsustainable cultivation, they can induce desertification. Summary. The global hydrological cycle involves interaction and exchanges of liquid, gaseous, and solid phases of water within components of Earth and the biosphere. So I'll let you read A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Catchments are topographically delimited areas that collect and transmit water from higher to lower elevations, feeding streams, rivers, and lakes. So read on to A, B, through A through F. And then third one is the water balance of a catchment or a lake describes the water inputs, outputs, and changes in water storage. A, B. And then land management practices and other human activities have modified water sources, timing, and pathways of water transports and the delivery of water to rivers, streams, and lakes.